A loud scandal involving Palestinian prisoners is now shaking all of Israel, although its origins date back to 2024. For a week now, all of Israel has been talking about Major General Tamer Yerushalmi, who was the chief legal officer of the Israeli army and was tasked with ensuring the rule of law in the country's armed forces. Recently, she resigned and disappeared, but after some time she was found and arrested. She is now under arrest herself as part of a criminal investigation into the leak of a video that allegedly shows abuse, including sexual violence, against Palestinian prisoners in the notorious Israeli military prison. But it should be noted right away that Tamer Yerushalmi had long been a target of the Israeli right, and therefore her arrest became a public issue. A national scandal that overshadowed the very video at the center of the case. So what is happening and why this episode? The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has already called it, quote, the worst public relations disaster in Israel's history. Let's figure it out. My name is Pechiy. Today is November 4th. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and leave any detailed comment under this video. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as soon as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation or paid subscription using the links and details provided in the description of this video. It says support the channel Pechiy. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I'm grateful for any support you give. So, in Israel, a new scandal has erupted over the publication of a video showing soldiers beating a Palestinian prisoner. Major General Tamer Yerushalmi took responsibility for the video leak and resigned from her position as the chief military prosecutor of the Israel Defense Forces. Then she disappeared for several hours but was found and arrested on suspicion of fraud. An undercover agent was found in the prison. In it, soldiers lead a Palestinian prisoner away and surround him with protective shields. Probably to hide their actions from the cameras, it was necessary to do so. The Israel Defense Forces have launched an investigation into soldiers who allegedly committed sexual violence against a Palestinian prisoner arrested during the war in Gaza, while about 24 other prisoners were lying face down nearby in the Tamer military prison. Earlier, by the way, journalists had already reported that there were indeed incidents of violence in this prison. The investigation and subsequent arrest of the soldiers sparked a strong political reaction. Well, some right-wing members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition even joined the protests and unrest near the Tamer facility and the military court where the arrested soldiers were taken. A month after the video was released, Israel announced the beginning of the gradual closure of this prison. However, this did not ease the attacks on the chief military lawyer of the Israel Defense Forces. And this brings us to Tamer Yerushalmi herself. She was removed from her position as chief military prosecutor because Israel's Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara announced the start of a criminal investigation about the leak of that very video. Let me explain here. Tamer Yerushalmi was removed because she allowed the public release of this very video, because she allowed the leak of this video. Even though it's still a military prison and surveillance camera footage shouldn't have made it into the public domain. They called it an unnecessary media leak. And 2 days later, Tamer Yerushalmi submitted her resignation. She confirmed that she was the one who approved the release of the video and took full responsibility for any material sent to the media from the unit. This is her quote. Thus, she confirmed that she was the one who gave permission to publish the video showing the alleged abuse of Palestinian prisoners. In her letter, she said the incitement campaign against her peaked after the decision to investigate soldiers' actions in Tamer. Quote, This campaign continues to this day and causes deep and serious harm to the Israel Defense Forces, its image, and the resilience of Israel Defense Forces soldiers and their commanders. Some things can't be done, even with the toughest detainees. Officers of the right-wing unit have repeatedly faced personal attacks, crude insults, and even real threats. This all happened because they defended the supremacy of the Israel Defense Forces' laws alongside the commanders. By the way, after that letter, she disappeared somewhere, and in Israel people thought that maybe she had even committed suicide, but then she was found on the beach. And here, the right wing and the so-called left wing in Israel come into direct confrontation. Because for the right-wing political echelon of Israel, resignations and investigations were not enough. A few hours after the resignation of Tamer Yerushalmi, Israel's defense minister Yisrael Katz stated that he would take, quote, all necessary measures against her, including stripping her of her rank. Then Katz accused the prosecutor of being involved in a blood libel against Israel Defense Forces soldiers. Although it's interesting that the authenticity of the video recording was not questioned. But in February 2025, 5 servicemen were charged with mistreating detainees, but they deny their guilt. But here Katz insists that Tamer Yerushalmi was engaged in slander. Overall, the current Prime Minister's cabinet attacked Tamer Yerushalmi with criticism. And now Benjamin Netanyahu called the leak of this video to the media a huge blow to his reputation, calling it, quote, the worst public relations disaster in Israel's history. The Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, called Tamer Yerushalmi's behavior criminal under the guise of law and called for the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate the video leak. And after that, it was announced that Tamer Yerushalmi had allegedly gone missing. On Sunday, for several hours, Israeli military and police could not find the woman who just a few days ago was the chief legal officer of the Israel Defense Forces. And in the Israel Defense Forces' statement, the army said, quote, it will use all available means to find her as soon as possible. But after a few hours, she was found on a beach north of Tel Aviv. As a result, on Sunday evening, the police arrested Tamer Yerushalmi on suspicion of committing several crimes. In particular, fraud and breach of trust, abuse of official authority, obstruction of justice, and disclosure of information by an official. By the way, she has not been officially charged yet, and she has not pleaded guilty. The next hearing in her case is scheduled for Wednesday, November 5th. Tamer Yerushalmi is also suspected of allegedly misleading the Supreme Court as well as high-ranking military and judicial officials regarding the video leak and even allegedly giving false testimony in court. In addition to Tamer Yerushalmi, other high-ranking officials of the military prosecutor's office are also involved in the leak and its alleged cover-up. It is also important to note here that the Palestinian detainee at the center of the alleged abuses, the one against whom the illegal actions and mistreatment were allegedly committed, was returned to Gaza as part of a contract termination agreement. This, of course, casts doubt on the prospects for effective prosecution of the soldiers accused in this case, since the alleged victim will not be able to testify in court. He definitely won't return to Israel, to testify in court himself. So, most likely the case will be closed. But I want to point out one very important aspect in this story. The resignation of Tamer Yerushalmi is the latest in a series of dismissals of high-ranking officials, who are usually replaced by people loyal to the ruling coalition and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Right-wing politicians and media openly criticize Tamer Yerushalmi for allowing the publication of this video. Moreover, this case has become part of a smaller one. Justice Minister Yariv Levin is trying to remove Baharaf Miaru, who is also often attacked by the right, from the leak investigation, also suggesting to check the involvement of the Attorney General himself in this case. And Yariv Levin says so directly, quote, the long-standing lie that has violated entire people's rights and harmed the states and Israel Defense Forces soldiers' security is now collapsing. One group used to treating the country as their own is giving way to another. Well, as they say, draw your own conclusions. So I leave it at that. Share your opinion and your conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.